He was dying. His body was collapsing. His voice, the voice that had shaken cities, was barely a whisper. And yet, with his final breath, he spoke one word: Jesus. Moments later, the streets outside erupted. Crowds pressed forward. Reports of miracles began almost immediately. But this was no king, no general, no pope. He was a barefoot Franciscan who owned nothing. So how did a fragile orphan become the preacher who could silence riots, reconcile blood feuds, and set an entire nation on fire with 3 simple letters? To understand the power of his final word, we must return to the wounds that shaped his first. This is the path to holiness of Saint Bernardine of Siena. Long before his deathbed whisper, there were the crowds. Thousands packed into Italian piazzas. Men who arrived armed, left reconciled. Families divided for generations embraced in tears. At the end of each sermon, Bernardine would lift a wooden tablet engraved with 3 letters: IHS. And something shifted in the air. Weapons lowered. Curses stopped. Silence fell over entire cities. Was it charisma? Political genius? Or something far more dangerous? Because not everyone believed this friar was harmless. He was accused of manipulating the people, of introducing strange devotions, of stirring emotional frenzy. He was summoned to Rome, investigated, watched closely. How did a man who refused power become powerful enough to threaten it? To answer that, we go backward. Before the crowds, there was obscurity. Before the authority, there was weakness. Before the powerful voice, there was a frail one. Bernardine was not born into influence. He was orphaned before the age of 7. Loss was his first teacher. Raised by devout relatives in Siena, he grew quiet, reflective, guarded. Holiness did not begin with preaching. It began with grief. Then came the plague. The kind of plague that entered streets and filled graves. Most fled. Bernardine ran toward it. At 20 years old, he volunteered in the hospital of Santa Maria della Scala. For months, he carried dying bodies. He inhaled the scent of infection. He listened to final confessions. He nearly died from exhaustion. But in those corridors of death, something irreversible happened. He discovered how fragile everything was. Wealth, status, politics, power. All of it vanished in a single breath. All except one thing: the soul, and the name of the one who saves it. After recovering, Bernardine disappeared from society. Not into ambition. Into prayer. In 1402, he entered the Franciscan order. He chose poverty when he could have chosen prestige. Silence when he could have chosen status. But even here, humiliation followed. His voice was weak. The future preacher of Italy could barely be heard in a small chapel. God was shaping him. Not into a performer, but into a vessel. When Bernardine finally began preaching publicly, it was different. He did not speak as a theorist. He spoke as a man who had watched people die. He preached against corruption, against greed, against moral decay. But he did not preach anger. He preached the holy name of Jesus. And when he raised the IHS symbol above thousands, Italy listened. Revival attracts resistance. He was accused, investigated in Rome in 1427. For a moment, it seemed everything would collapse. But Pope Martin V examined his teaching and found no error. Instead of condemnation, he received approval. The trial purified the mission. Holiness, when authentic, survives examination. 3 times he was offered a bishopric. 3 times he refused. He would not exchange poverty for prestige. He chose dusty roads over cathedrals. He chose movement over comfort. He chose obedience over control. Because the deeper his fame grew, the more fiercely he guarded humility. And so we return to the deathbed. The man who had carried the name across Italy could barely lift his head. The crowds outside were restless. Inside, silence. He had no wealth, no title, no political office. Only a life spent giving everything away. And with his final breath, he whispered, Jesus. The name he had lifted above cities now carried him into eternity. In a world desperate for louder voices, Saint Bernardine reminds us, holiness is not born from strength. It is born from surrender. The power that reconciled nations began in a hospital ward filled with plague victims. The voice that moved thousands was first shaped in weakness, and the name that healed cities was first discovered in silence. The question is not whether the world can change. The question is, what name are we carrying into it?